Opinion is opinion, and, you know, everyone is entitled to it. There are occasionally quotes on posters in which you think, now, either you haven't seen that film or you are certifiable.
Or you've been given money to say.
Well, no. Well, that is a very, very, you know, a serious allegation to make.
I haven't made it against anyone.
No, exactly. But
I'm safe.
It is certainly true that I mean, I know that critic friends of mine have been quoted out of context. You know, things that they haven't given good reviews to. They've just used phrases that have then been taken. But certainly, when you see things like, it's the best action-adventure movie of all time, and it's something like, you know, Transporter 4 or something. You think, now, either you have no frame of reference and you are just so amazed by the miracle of moving pictures and sound being coordinated that you're that thrilled. I mean, there are some movie critics in this country who you do think it's like every time they go to the movies, they're just completely overwhelmed by the thing about cinema. But the honest truth of it is, they probably don't go to the cinema.
Yeah, it has to be said, there are some movie critics that actually don't see the films.
I have been told on good authority that there's at least one major movie critic who doesn't go to see them.
Vogue on Poetry, very famous. Douglas Adams used to write about this. Is it the second worst poetry in the world?
Yeah, and the first worst is actually a person who lives in Sussex, right?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, Vogue on Poetry, as originally mentioned in the radio and TV series, sounded like this.
Oh, freddled gruntbugly, thy micturations are to me as plurdle gabble-blotchets on a lurgid bee. Group, I implore thee, with my funting furling domes, and hooptiously drangle me with crinkly bindle wordles, or I will rend thee in gobblewarts with my blurgle cruncheon, see if I don't. And
you make it sound like Stanley Unwin.
That's a very high praise. I love Stanley Unwin.
And the UK box office #1 is, of course, Star Wars, The Revenge of the Sith.
You know,
you don't need to say
no, it's just don't. And listen, and George, if you're listening, we don't need 7 to 9. Just incredibly dull. They've even got a scene in which he and his girlfriend sit in a restaurant, and she pretends to have an event. She's pretending to choke, but it's like, hang on, are Nora Ephron's lawyers on the phone not suing you now? Why is this not happening?
An event, is that what it's called in the Kermode house? Yeah, no. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith at 4.
Uneventful, despite several events.
The Jans in Solihull, Bananarama were to music what Spice Girls were to film.
No. Do not say Bananarama and Spice Girls in the same breath.
How can Kermode sit there and talk up a group of singers who, to my knowledge, did not write or produce any music, or, for that matter, play any instruments? Listening to film reviews will never be the same.
Well, what I can say is that if you go back and listen to the second Bananarama album, which has songs about Northern Ireland, and they are also, I think, the only...
Oh, well, that proves it. Well, they
sorry, but people said, and they did write those, incidentally. You know.
Anyway, they've written the songs on their new album, none of which is relevant. People tune in not for your thoughts on Bananarama, but maybe occasionally for a film
one of the
review.
very few bands who've had a top 10 single about sexual harassment, so I'm sorry.
Is there a sense of the fact the further back you go, with a horror film particularly, the less scary it is?
Well, I tell you, I don't think so, because the weekend I was doing...
The exception, I suppose.
Yes,
Sorry.
The Exorcist, obviously.
No, I was thinking of Nosferatu, actually, the original, which is
presumably
terrifying.
Yes, but also, just over the weekend, I was doing an on-stage with somebody, and we showed the central scene from Eyes Without a Face, the Georges Franju movie, and which is actually the face transplant sequence, oddly enough, and it's absolutely terrifying. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is still every bit as scary as it was originally. Last House on the Left is still really... There's a real mephitic air about that film. You really think, you know...
A what?
A mephitic air.
What's a mephitic air?
You know, as in Mephisto. It's
right,
a real
Mephisto,
evil... Yeah, I mean, did you really think you're in the company of something bad?
I didn't know that there was a mephitic. I don't... Is there...
Yes,
there is.
Can you prove to
me that mephitic is
a
word?
Let's ask the nation. Everybody email in and tell Simon that there is a word
No,
mephitic.
don't do that. Give me an example of where the word mephitic has actually been used somewhere in either a review or literature, and then I'll...
Well, and the one that I just did there.
That doesn't count. You just made it up.
Of course, this is like, you know, I say table, and you say, well, prove to me...
Richard said, so if what the film critics say makes no impact, why do we bother with them?
Well, because it's interesting. For 2 reasons. Firstly, because films are, of course, the most important thing in the world. And secondly, because you don't have to bother with them. I mean, you know, there's an awful lot of critics out there who think that The Exorcist isn't the greatest movie ever made and don't like Citizen Kane. So, hey, you know, you pays your money, you takes your choice.
The Business, which is the new Nick Love movie. I presume that James reviewed this last week because I was off last week. And basically it's about a bunch of really leery geezers. They all go, yeah, well, you know, and they're all running around, they're dealing drugs, they're all really lovable, they're all really great. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, you know, I hated them the first time round. I hated the 80s in the 80s. Why do I now have to watch a movie telling me that actually they're all really great? You know, it's really great. It's much less interesting than Love's previous film.
And an 18 because of the drugs?
Because of the drugs, because of the swearing, and presumably because of the clothes, which really do need an 18 rating.
John in Sheffield. So Mark thinks Sin City is okay. Well, I don't care how fantasy the violence is. Any film with a poster ad showing each character brandishing a huge gun and claiming to be the coolest film of the year leaves me very worried about the sort of world Hollywood and Kermode want us to live in.
It's a cartoon caricature parody, and you know, honestly, if I was to start getting morally worried about all the vacuous films that are taken seriously, I mean, for at least Sin City knows what it is. Nobody could go and see Sin City and think that what we're talking about is real violence. In a week that something like Inside Deep Throat comes out, or Badass comes out, which has got an awful lot of stuff about it, about the political mistreatment, you know, of people in America, I think that's something to take much more seriously. Sin City is a comic strip. Literally a comic.
If Gandhi's grandson thinks Gandhi is a decent movie, then, frankly, that's the end of the conversation.
But I'm sorry, what is Gandhi's grandson going to say?
It was very disappointing.
Why would he say that? I mean, as you know, everyone in the world loves the film apart from me and William Friedkin. And
Dave in Wokingham says, tell Mark to check his dictionary. He will find a definition of a vegetarian, someone who does not eat meat, fowl or fish. How can anyone take his film reviews seriously if he can't even get a simple fact like that right? If he eats fish, he's not a vegetarian.
Well, you know, I've been around this an awfully long time, so I describe myself as a vegetarian who eats fish, but I'm quite happy to say that I'm a carnivore who doesn't eat red meat, or white meat, or indeed anything that walks.